This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 36 of Healthy Critters Radio on the Horse Radio Network. Healthy Critters Radio is brought to you by Biostar US. Find them online at biostarus.com.
On today's show, we talk with Wynn Walcott from Renew Gold on how horse feeds can be contaminated. In Tigapedia, we learn about magnesium. Critter Nutrition focuses on how to avoid contaminated feed. And in Coffee Clatch, we discuss purebred dog crosses that are unlikely. Patty P. I'm very excited about today's show. You want to know why?
Why? Yes, I do.
Because we have Wynn Walcott from Renew Gold.
Yes.
And I asked him on because, as you know, two very well-known dressage riders recently tested positive, their horses tested positive, for a banned substance called ractopamine.
Right.
And I called Wynn on the phone and I said, Wynn, you're in the feed business. How does this happen?
Right.
And he was so amazing about the information he had about how feeds are made because he's been in the feed business for a gazillion years.
Right.
So I'm really excited that we have him because you need to hear it from the horse's mouth. And this is a very serious issue.
Right. Well, sure it is. Yeah, sure it is. Well, I cannot wait to hear about this. I am very excited.
And the interesting thing that he and I talked about was the fact that if something happens in the dressage world, mm-hmm. it generally doesn't jump and get heard by the racehorse people. And it doesn't get heard by the barrel racers or the reiners. Sometimes it's heard by the hunter jumper. In other words, we're not sharing. And likewise, we don't hear when ractopamine shows up in a racehorse in California. We don't hear about that.
Right. Yeah.
And that there's a real need for this information to get out into the horse industry at large instead of just staying confined to our, own particular sport. I'm sure the driving people have no idea that this has happened.
Well, it is so outside of the different sports. I mean, that part of it somewhat makes sense to me because when someone will say something happens in a hunter jumper world, which is, I guess I feel like that's the closest to us being a dressage. It does make sense, but I wonder how we can close that gap.
And I think we need to close the gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because feed contamination isn't an anomaly, as we will find out in the show. So
yeah,
don't want to be doom and gloom, but it's really, really important information.
Yeah, I'm anxious to hear about it.
And we're here with Wynn Walcott from Renew Gold, and we've invited him. This is his second visit to Healthy Critters because he and I had a conversation recently about contaminated feeds. And for many people, many of our listeners who are in the dressage world, you know that two very prominent riders, horses tested positive for ractopamine. The common denominator with what the horses were being fed was the feed. So I speed dialed my favorite feed person expert, which is Wynn. And he was a wealth of information, and I wanted everyone to hear his knowledge and experience on how feed does get contaminated and how, his product in particular, Renew Gold, avoids those potholes. So welcome, Wynn.
Welcome.
Hey, it's a pleasure as always.
So can you lead us through the chain that can cause contamination in horse feeds?
I can, and this is not a new scenario. This is something that's happened as long as horse feeds have been made and medicated livestock feeds have been made, and the primary occurrence is a cross-contamination during the production of those feeds. And we seem to hear more about it now, I think basically because of the wealth of information and the quick spread of information over the internet. These things, while fairly rare, are not uncommon, but in the past, before the internet, they happened in a certain area. All of the lot of whatever the contaminated feed was went into a specific area. Usually the feed company and the damaged party came to some sort of an agreement, and that was sort of the end of it. People in the area would hear about it and get upset, but the whole country or the whole world wouldn't hear about it. Now, when horses die or are ruined by feed contamination, it spreads like wildfire on the internet. So I think it is maybe not any more common than it always was. It's just more commonly made aware today. So basically what happens is most feed companies don't make their living feeding horses. They make their living feeding livestock. And part of that involves medicated feeds for specific species. And that's not a problem. They're safe products. Almost everybody knows what an ionophore is now today, because that's been the most common contamination.
Which is the Magnesium, correct?
Magnesium is one of them. There's several of them. Lasolactid is another one that has the trade name Bovatec. Magnesium, the trade name is Rumensin. So, and both of those are antibiotic treatments for beef, dairy, sheep, goat, and poultry, and they're safe in those species, but they are incredibly volatile in a horse, and to the point that 1/2 of 1 gram of Magnesium can kill a horse. There is 454 grams in a pound. So 1/454th of a pound can kill a horse. And so, but I think what we're finding now, what we're learning today that we didn't learn, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, is that you don't necessarily have to kill them. There can be a very, very minor level of contamination, somewhere significantly lower than that 1 gram, that causes a negative impact to the heart tissue in the horse and basically ruins them as a performance prospect or a performance horse, but doesn't kill them. And this is fairly new news as far as what we see in the industry, because, and we know this now because the testing has gotten better. We're able to test to smaller inclusion rates than we were able to in the past. And usually in the past, we'd go down to, say, 5 parts per million. If we didn't see it, we thought, well, that feed was clean. But, today they can go considerably lower rates than that, and they're picking up some residual amounts at that, and all of a sudden some of these mystery damages in horses are making sense. Before, we thought if it was there, it just killed them. Now we find that it can maybe not kill them, but still have a debilitating effect. At a much lower rate.
But that's not the case with ractopamine. That's not the same category of drug.
No, ractopamine is primarily used in swine production to generate leaner meat, and it's outlawed in many organizations, many horse organizations, because they thought there may be some advantages to it in horses as a steroid-like supplement. But I think that it's highly likely. But I don't know of anybody that's actually trying to sneak it into their horses.
Right.
I just don't think that's where the situation is. I think it's much more likely that a swine formula was processed and there wasn't an adequate flush out of before a horse product was made, and that there was probably residual in the production line. And I would imagine, I don't know, this is strictly my opinion, but that's how I could see that getting into these horses that had been disqualified. And I think that, and there's some others too, but most of the other ones are performance enhancers and don't accidentally get into the feed. I mean, if they find it, somebody will likely put it there. But for this product, it would be, to me, it would be far more likely that it would be an improper flush out or clean out on the production line after a swine product was made. So, I'm not anybody's attorney. I'm a biochemist.
Right.
So Wynn, can you walk us through what you do to protect your product from contamination, Renew Gold?
Yes, and not to make a Renew Gold ad, but this is something that everybody should consider when they buy feeds. We manufacture in 3 different locations, and the number one rule is that there can be no medicated ingredients produced there and no medicated ingredients physically on the property. So that is the most ironclad way that you can, and we're not the only company that does this. There are other companies that have what, the term clean mill has popped up in the last couple of years to kind of signify that. But there are other considerations beyond that. But that's the most important one as far as I'm concerned. And you also have to know there's another step that goes beyond that, though, and that's where do the ingredients come from? Yeah. Because if you have ingredients that were processed through a mill that makes medicated feeds, or a premix that comes from a mill that makes medicated premixes, or were transferred in a bulk truck that had carried medicated feeds, there's a whole bunch of other ways that something like this can occur. So you really got to have, and it is really a leap of faith to a certain extent, even with somebody like our product. I mean, everything we do is food grade, but, and that is fairly unique, but still, when somebody buys our product, they're relying on our reputation of 35 years of doing this, that, we've never made a horse sick, and we safety ourselves up. It's my name on the bag. So, that's something that we do, but we're not the only one, that being said. But there are, these medications are not the only source of potential contamination. I mean, there's mold, there's salmonella, there's E. coli, and all of that goes to ingredient quality and the reputation of and how seriously the company takes what they make. So, I mean, there's more to it than that. But as far as you can't physically have, in my mind, you can't physically have medications on the property because the potential will always be there. If they're not making medicated feeds, there's no point to have them there, first of all. If they are making medicated feeds, they have to be registered with FDA to make those medicated feeds. And FDA has a certain protocol on how the lines are supposed to be cleaned and flushed. And then there's supposed to be a non-medicated, same species product as the medicated product before you go to a horse product.
Oh, wow.
So in theory, there should be no way any contamination gets through there, but it does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we see it all the time. So the best intentions, those people are still human. And the way to avoid that is not to have medications on the property.
Wynn, can you explain a little bit about the processing of your rice? Because there's a lot of rice bran out there. It's in a lot of horse feed, but you have a very specific.
Boy, Tigger, I don't know that you have enough time for that. We use stabilized rice bran, which we invented in the 1980s, and there's a wealth of difference. And I tell people that feed raw rice bran or extended life rice bran, they need to be very careful with it because that is a waste product. And stabilized rice bran is destined to be a food grade product from the very start, and it's handled as a food grade product. And so it has less opportunity to have the other type of contamination, the mycotoxins, the molds, salmonella, E. coli, all of that because of the way it's stored and the way it's handled.
But isn't it also initially you're extracting the bran in just a rice facility? There is nothing else.
Correct.
Yeah.
No, and the stabilization of it has to physically be in that rice facility. You can't transfer it someplace else and stabilize it because it will already be rancid. The shelf life on raw rice bran is 8 hours.
Whoa.
And
wow.
The shelf life on stabilized rice bran is 1 year. So, but you've got we stabilize less than a minute off the rice kernel.
Wow.
And so, and then it's handled as a food grade product from then on. And actually that same product goes to General Mills and Quaker and they use it and it's mixed back into rice flour to make whole grain rice flour. But that's the domestic human use of the product, but it's the identical product.
But once you've stabilized it, because this is what you told me, then you bag it, so it's not being transported loose.
Oh, that's correct. No, we never bulk ship it. It never bulk ships, so it doesn't go into and it's never, and no bag is ever used twice. We bag it in those big 1 ton tote bags.
Oh yeah.
And we use those big bags one time. So, I wish there was a way that we could use them because they're really expensive, but, and therefore the cost difference in stabilized rice bran, it's the difference between a waste product and a food grade product. And it's the same. It's kind of like saying all hay is the same.
Yeah.
Wow. When
most horse people can at least relate to that.
Yes.
If we're reading a feed tag label and it doesn't say stabilized, could it be stabilized and they just don't say it, or
it would be unlikely?
Okay.
Because it is so much more expensive to buy it, to stabilize it, to move it, to buy it, how it's handled, all of that makes it more expensive. And we obviously think worth it. But that most manufacturers are pretty proud of the fact that they go to that extent. So, and you'll see a number of products out there that list stabilized rice bran as an ingredient. I was just looking at a Florida product today. Somebody sent me a label out, and I was happy to see that they listed it as stabilized rice bran as the ingredients list. And so if it doesn't say stabilized, it probably is not.
Okay.
And I'm cautious. I'm very cautious.
Another thing that you pointed out to me which I think is really, really important for people to understand, is that the level of testing that these international federations, national federations, racing commissions, the levels of which they can test for contaminants is way, way lower than what the feed company mills are testing. I mean, their
very
acceptable
commonly
levels
so
are much higher.
and they may test for a specific ingredient that is available in a number of different forms, and therefore it would be illegal in one form because it would show up on a test in a more natural state. It would be metabolized, it wouldn't and broken down and wouldn't show as that ingredient. So I think in general, people rely too much on being creative in trying to give a chemical advantage to an animal or a supplemented advantage to an animal beyond natural skill or natural ability or talent. They can only be what they can be. And, genetically, some of them are superior examples to others. And, it's kind of the silk purse out of the sow's ear deal. But the testing has become so sophisticated today that people aren't just getting away from it. There is one more piece to that, and that is intentional contamination. And that's the third piece.
Ooh.
There's a reason why in the thoroughbred industry, a lot of the top horses have somebody in front of the stall that never leaves.
Right.
You can drop something in the water, and we don't see that generally in the types of competition horses that we're involved with here in the U.S. But where you do have the potential, and it's kind of the one thing that people don't really pay a lot of attention to, and maybe rightfully so, but there's always the disgruntled employee aspect of having, if you have a feed mill that makes a medicated feed on a completely separate line, and you have a contamination issue, somebody that got fired may have walked past the bin and dropped a handful in, and that's the one thing there. Again, it gets back to having no medications on the property.
Yeah.
You just that's another piece that you take away from that. I mean, I'm not an overly suspicious guy, but seasonal employees that don't think they should have been laid off or that sort of thing.
Or maybe they were hungover. I was thinking about that. They'd partied all night and they didn't go through all the steps.
Then you get into the mistake mode, and that's the other, and that's people are human, and these mills have mistakes. It frustrates me when I see certain manufacturers get cited over and over for potentially dangerous rotations on their production, and FDA come in and do a survey, and they'll write them up and say you have a potential here for a problem. We don't think you're doing your cleanouts right, or something like that. And they ignore that. They throw it in a file, and they don't change. And so there again, the best answer, not to have the medications on the property to start off with. It's the closest thing that we can do to make that guarantee. And there have been some I see online on social media where somebody will go to the trouble to survey a whole bunch of manufacturers and run a list, and say, these are the people that don't do any medications in their mills. And it's worthwhile to search those out because things aren't, the industry changes all the time and everybody's cutting corners and everybody's trying to make the money they can make out of the deal. Right. And a lot of, we've seen, and Tigger, you and I have talked in the past about how there was a time when all the premium feed products were fixed formulated. Yep. And now a lot of them are least cost formulated. Well, a lot of horse feeds used to be made in dedicated mills that they see an economic opportunity by being able to make multi-species feeds in those mills, and they're tempted by medications. And, and not that they'll ever have a problem, but that ups the opportunity 1,000-fold. Yep. I mean, if the medications aren't there, they can't get in the feed.
Wynn, can you just briefly explain the difference between a fixed feed formula?
Absolutely. There was a time when, as I said, when all of the premium feeds were fixed formulated, and that meant that every time you manufactured it, you made it exactly the same with exactly the same ingredients in exactly the same ratios. And so what you did, the most practical thing to do in that case was the law requires that on your ingredients list that you list those ingredients from the most used as the first one listed to the least used.
By weight. By weight, not volume.
By weight, yeah. By inclusion percentage. And so those, and if you look on, and I'll use Renew Gold as a shameless
go ahead.
Example.
We love Renew Gold.
If you look at the bag, the ingredients list is printed on the bag. I can't change it without making that label illegal. But so many feed companies have found that while they have to guarantee protein, fat, fiber, and ash on their analysis, they don't need to say how they get there. Right. So they'll have a ingredient broker that will shop the ingredient markets every week or every buying cycle, however often they buy their ingredients. And one week they may buy one ingredient that is 12% protein, a grain-based ingredient. The next week they might buy a different one, but it's still the same amount of protein. All they have to do, and then they'll stir that around to hit that same protein, fat, fiber, and ash, but it'll be a totally different ingredient list. Yep. So they've completely changed your feed program by doing that. And the way you identify that is it has a sewn-on tear tag on the bag. They can't print the ingredients physically on the bag itself because they'd have to reprint the bags every time. This way, they only have to reprint the little tear tag.
Yeah.
So fixed formulation, always made the same. Ingredients always printed physically on the bag itself. Least cost formulated, different every time you buy it, always has an attached tag on the bag because they can just print that little tag.
Well, one thing I've noticed, Wynn, is that the fixed cost feeds list their ingredients on their website and the others don't. Because
Isn't
it's always
that an
changing.
Interesting deal? Well, how would you do it? You'd have to have your webmaster in there.
Every week.
Every week changing your ingredients list. And I do a lot of direct to the customer help on the phone and always have. And when somebody will say, I feed such and such, and they may be in New Jersey, and it'll be a local, regional, while I'm talking to them on the phone, I'll pull it up on the website and I'll try to look at the ingredients list. And you're absolutely right. It's a dead giveaway. If I go through that ingredients or through that website and cannot find an ingredient list, then I know it's a least cost formulated feed. And then it's kind of shooting in the dark because, and I've had people with, on some nationally branded products say, well, I feed X because I can get it everywhere I go. I travel a lot and I get it everywhere I go. What they can get everywhere they go is the same bag. What's in the bag is completely different.
That's a really good point.
From where they left. And so, and all of us know that horses just thrive on consistency. You find what works and you stick with what works at the same amounts and the same ratios adjusted to to caloric needs depending on effort changes. But other than that, you keep them in that same sweet spot as far as what really gets their body to function normally and naturally and efficiently. And you don't change that. You don't want to change that. And these least cost formulated feeds, every time you open a bag, you're changing it. And if they're fed at any significant amounts, you're changing it significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wynn, thank you so much. Always, I love your multiple years, 35 years of experience. We have to have you back because you know so much, and it's important to carry on that knowledge to us other horse people.
Well, you're fighting the good fight, and I'm always happy to help if there's any way I can.
Well, I really appreciate it, Wynn.
Okay,
yeah,
well, I enjoyed it.
Information. Thank you so much.
Hello?
Hetty!
Hi, Hetty. How are you?
Tigger and Patty. And who is joining us this evening? Is it Jennifer?
It is.
Hello, Jennifer.
Honored to speak with you again, Hetty.
Always pleased to speak with you as well.
Hedwig, we've been discussing or thinking about music. And,
oh, good.
You know, how wonderful it is for the spirit. If you were going to play an instrument and learn to play an instrument, what would it be and why?
Oh, it's an interesting question, given that I am a small dog and have no thumbs, and therefore you're discriminating against me because all instruments require thumbs.
That's not true.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Like a hand drum, you could beat with your
head.
Tail or your head or your paw.
Yeah.
Really, you're grasping, and I'm embarrassed for you now. Once again, we've proven that you're just discriminating against small dogs and then grasping. But if we were to pretend that I had thumbs and was therefore somehow capable of playing musical instruments designed by humans, which I would never do because I am a small dog, I think that I would play the kazoo.
Can I guess why?
You go right ahead.
Would you have a yellow kazoo because it would remind you of cheese?
No.
Oh, okay. It was just a question.
It would be red.
It would be red?
I don't know what color. I think purple.
Purple?
It would clash with you.
Yeah, why purple? I'm curious.
Because it would look lovely with my suits.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
Well, you are
Okay.
a fashion conscious dog, so that does make sense, I guess.
Yes. Well, being blessed with extraordinarily good looks, one must work with what one has.
Yeah.
And what kind of songs would you play on your kazoo?
Always look on the bright side of life.
And there you have it.
A little body python from a small dog.
There you go.
There
you go. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you very much, Hetty. We appreciate your input on musical instruments, and we will expect to see a jump in the stock price of kazoo manufacturers.
Purple kazoos.
Everybody wants one.
Yes, they do.
Maybe you could play a little bit on the next show.
Oh.
Well, if you're very lucky.
You can
perhaps I will.
I think that would be okay.
We would be so
show,
thrilled.
We'll expect to hear your
thrilled
kazoo skills.
Okay.
Thank
you,
Hetty.
No problem.
Well, thanks, Hetty.
Okay, thanks, Hetty.
Goodbye.
We are now at the Tigopedia portion of our show, and I have actually a question I had just asked Tigger today, and it was sort of an interesting role in response, and it was about magnesium. And I know as a trainer, I don't know if you've ever dealt with this, Jennifer, but I have over the years been told it's very good to, have your horses on magnesium. And I said to Tigger today, I said, gee, do you think Stu needs to be on magnesium, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, why? So I said, I want my question to be on magnesium. And she said, okay.
So I have an inkling about how this conversation's going to go, but go for it, Tigger.
I can send you the text. It's sort of that, good morning, Tiggyrilla. Stu needs magnesium. Why? But anyway, the question is, and I think any of the listeners would really benefit from that, and even trainers that listen, because this is the first time I've ever heard this. And now the couple things that I would like to say. I was always told it was good for muscle recovery or help their muscles not get tight. I also always knew that it was for helping horses that were a little bit more reactive, sort of relax a little bit more. My question to you today was about a Grand Prix horse working very hard. Should he have a certain amount of magnesium? Now, my horse is on all Biostar products and Cool Stance. Okay, Tigger, go.
Okay.
You're up.
So, research at Auburn University has determined that the deficiency is virtually rare in horses.
Okay.
And the reason is because, first of all, we're not exactly sure how much magnesium they need. Mm-hmm. We think it's 5 milligrams a day, but grasses and vegetation are loaded with magnesium. Okay. So it's unlikely to be a deficit.
It's so interesting. Okay.
So my take on magnesium is, first of all, you have to consider that magnesium in the body works with calcium.
Okay.
When you supplement one mineral and it's not then balanced with its opposite or its pair, which is calcium. Magnesium is sort of the muscle that relaxes, and calcium is the muscle that contracts. Think of them together. So if now you're adding more magnesium, do you have enough calcium? Do you need to add more calcium to it? So that's always my first concern when you add one mineral, because the minerals work in combination with each other. The second is the form of magnesium. I mean, you can use a really inexpensive Epsom salts, for example, a magnesium oxide or magnesium sulfate. If you give too much, your horse is going to get diarrhea. It's not a highly bioavailable form of magnesium. Some of the best, I think, are the malates, magnesium malate. There are a couple of companies that have it. And here's the thing with magnesium, some horses respond great to it. Mm-hmm. And some horses, there's no response at all.
Right. And I've seen that.
So that's clearly telling you whether you have a deficiency or not. And again, deficiency as we know it from a scientific point of view, there was one instance that Auburn gave of a broodmare that was not eating for a long period of time while nursing. And when they drew blood, she had a magnesium deficiency. Okay. So, but that's because she's not eating food that contains magnesium.
Right.
So, a horse on pasture and hay is getting magnesium. Now, is some of the hay lower in magnesium than it used to be? Possibly. If you're going to supplement, make sure you give it in a bioavailable form. I know Epsom salts are cheap, but I would go with a malate, because then your horse is really going to, if it needs it, it's really going to get the effects of it.
Right.
But make sure you're not imbalancing all the other minerals, because they all live in concert together.
I think that's the most interesting thing is that you don't, that's just so interesting. Cause like you think about it. Cause I mean, for a while there, years ago, I was like, okay, they all need magnesium, blah, 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 blah. And I can't remember why I got on that kick. And so, I actually bought magnesium and I would put it in all of their food. And then I realized, well, some of the horses were coming up with diarrhea. So I stopped doing it because I thought, well, that's not right. If their body's obviously telling me, hello, this is not working, so I stopped doing it. But that's it. That's an interesting thing. So when does Biostar use magnesium or products that have magnesium in any of the things? So it's
we use foods that are high in magnesium, but we don't use isolated magnesium ever.
Right. Okay. Because it's not a food. Right.
Well, because we don't believe that minerals should be isolated. We believe that they live in concert with other minerals.
Right. Okay.
That's the way they are in nature.
I'm not going to eat any raw eggs, but doggone it, I love myself some pancake batter. See, they go together and they're good.
Yeah.
Separate, not so much.
Yeah. There you go. Well, there you go.
We're now at Critter Nutrition, and I'm actually going to read some excerpts from a rather large article that I wrote called Contaminated Feed and Supplements. You can access it at biostarus.com under articles in light of the ractopamine banned substance found in 2 prominent dressage horses. I wanted to jump down the rabbit hole and learn more about contamination and ractopamine and how we can avoid it. So ractopamine is approved in the U.S. for pigs and turkeys and cattle to build muscle and size. Nearly 160 nations ban or restrict the use of this drug during pig production, including the European Union, Russia, and China. Ractopamine belongs to a class of drugs called beta agonists that were developed to treat asthma and adapted for animal use when they were shown to boost growth rates by increasing protein synthesis. The drug clenbuterol that's used for COPD and other airway diseases is also a beta agonist drug. The FDA has linked ractopamine to nearly 250,000 reported adverse events in pigs, more than any other animal drug. According to the Cornucopia Institute, the controversial drug is used in as many as 80% of all American pig and cattle operations. In cattle production, the drug is administered during the days leading up to slaughter. Other drugs used in cattle and hogs require a clearance period of 2 weeks to ensure the compounds are flushed from the body prior to slaughter. However, there is no clearance period required for ractopamine. Ractopamine is not, of course, the only illegal substance that we can find that in contaminated feeds. Monensin is toxic and deadly to horses in trace amounts. Once a horse has ingested monensin, the damage is irreversible and treatment is supportive. Symptoms of monensin toxicity include colic, sweating, muscle wasting, bloating, kidney failure, damage to the heart muscle, respiratory distress, stiffness, and inability to stand. How common is feed contamination? A journey down the rabbit hole illuminated to me the fact that contamination is not as rare as one would hope. From 2013 to 2016, there have been a total of 221 reported deaths, injuries, and positive drug tests from contaminated equine feeds, not including the positive drug tests from several Canadian provinces whose precise numbers I was unable to locate. What we don't know is the number of horses possibly exposed to ractopamine who were never tested. The U.S. is not the only country that faces feed contamination. In September 2015, 2 Swiss jumper riders were finally declared no fault by the FEI after their horses tested positive for morphine and codeine. The riders were able to establish a case of contamination by feed company Swiss Fritz. The feed had been contaminated with poppy seeds. The Queen of England's second-place Ascot winner, Estimate, tested positive for morphine in 2014. Poppy seeds contain minute amounts of morphine and codeine. The contamination came from poppy seeds entering the supply chain during harvesting, processing, transport, or storage. For 8 horses that returned a positive test for morphine contamination, it was traced back to the feed sold by Dodson and Horrell Feed Company. According to the British Horse Racing Authority, no penalty was imposed on the trainers. However, the horses were disqualified. In my article, I have researched a list of contaminated cases that are part of the public record, and you're welcome to go down and read all those. Supplement contamination. The famous 2009 case where a vitamin mineral supplement prepared by a compounding pharmacy killed 21 polo ponies because the supplement contained toxic levels of selenium. How do we reduce the risk of contaminated feeds? Purchase feed from a company whose mills only produce horse feed. Unfortunately, these mills are rare, as most mills that make horse feed also make livestock feed, particularly medicated livestock feed. Buy organic feed. Mills that are certified organic cannot run medicated feeds. Non-GMO ingredients are important for overall horse health, but can still come from facilities that make medicated feeds. A mill that provides a dedicated medication-free production line for their equine feeds is still at risk when there are medications on the premises. Component feeding can reduce risk as you are buying individual feed components that are often milled in facilities that are specific to each ingredient. For instance, a rice mill or oat mill, coconut, wheat, forage. It's important because there is much less of contamination. Dehydrated foods like coconut meal, Timothy pellets and cubes, alfalfa pellets and cubes are available from companies that only mill coconut or forages or certified organic ingredients. These would be Cool Stance, Standley, and New Country Organics. Companies such as Renew Gold have their equine products made in specific facilities of which there are no medicated feeds or any medication on the premises. Renew Gold has their raw ingredients bagged before transport and then bagged immediately after the production run. Check with your feed company about the transportation protocols used for their individual ingredients. Do not underestimate the risk of contamination coming from ingredients transported in bulk, not bags. Remember, mills are testing their own feeds for contamination at much more lenient, acceptable levels than the testing labs of federation and racing commissions. This means that companies need to start lowering their threshold of acceptable contamination. For those of us in the equine industry, the only acceptable level is 0. The FDA has a list of animal and veterinary product recalls and withdrawals from the market, which can be found on the FDA official website. The list is updated weekly, and you can also sign up for regular email notification from this page. A quick perusal showed that from January to April 2017, there were 11 recalls, mostly of dog and cat food, but one for rabbit pellets. One dog food brand was recalled for the presence of the drug phenobarbital. There was a time not so long ago when livestock and horse feed was simply mixed grains made in local mills, also often from locally grown corn, oats, and barley. The advent of complete feeds added another component, vitamin and mineral premixes. But the rise in corporate concentrated animal feeding operations brought the need to medicate thousands of animals kept in confinement. Thus began the era of medicated additives and medicated feeds, as concentrated feeding operations looked to the pharmaceutical industry for medications used to increasing the weight and size of their animals before slaughter. In 2016, the global medicated feed additives market was estimated at $11.16 billion. Medicated feed concentrates, which are substances mixed with other feed materials to form a complete feed or as part of a feed supplement, are now estimated to represent the fastest growing segment of the market. Another component of Big Ag is size. Over time, we've lost many of our small local and regional feed mills and companies because they were either swallowed up by Big Ag or unable to compete. What this has done is condense our feed supply, almost centralizing it to only a few big players. Think of big ag companies as gigantic aircraft carriers, hard to quickly maneuver and slow to change course even when a course change is essential. We consumers have become reliant on convenience which complete feeds provide, but we are now beginning to see that the convenience may put our horses, dogs, and ourselves at risk. Big ag is not just the producers and purveyor of animal feed and pet feed. The livestock they feed are the meats we eat. There once was a company named Ralston Purina founded in 1894. Purina Mills was the animal feed division of Ralston Purina that was sold in 1986 to British Petroleum, who then sold it to Sterling Group of Houston in 1993, and then to the Koch brothers in 1998, and finally to Land O'Lakes in 2001. Ralston Purina spun off its international feed business as Agri-Brands, which Cargill acquired in 2001. Cargill also owns Nutrena and Progressive Nutrition. Also in 2001, Ralston Purina, now primarily a pet food company, merged with Swiss food giant Nestle. This merger gave Nestle ownership of the Purina Chow brand names, which are now licensed to Purina Mills, which is Land O'Lakes, by Nestle. Outside the U.S., Nestle licenses those branding rights for the animal feeds to Cargill. In Canada, for example, Purina Dog Chow is a Cargill product. Where do we go from here? Despite the speed of the internet and the connectivity it provides, the equine community is largely separated between disciplines. I spoke recently with a couple of barrel racers who had no idea that ractopamine had shown up in a routine drug test of 2 dressage horses. Likewise, I had no idea about 2 barrel race horses who died from Magnesium contamination last year. Nor did I know about the Canadian standardbred horses or the American thoroughbred race horses who tested positive for ractopamine. Contamination of feed is a problem for all of us in the horse world, but we need to share facts, not hyperbole. We need to stand up for changes to big ag, which require a zero-tolerance stance toward medication residue in feeds, that equine feeds be made in medication-free facilities, that non-bag bulk ingredients be tested for medication residue and other contaminants by load when they arrive at the mill before being blended into complete feed formulas. We need to demand fixed feed formulas which list the ingredients specifically. One of the challenges of assessing feeds is that variable formulas don't list ingredients on company websites, and that variable feed formulas change weekly or even daily according to the cheapest combination of ingredients. We need to demand organics, particularly of the feed ingredients most susceptible to glyphosate exposure: soy, alfalfa, corn, rice, sunflower, flax, sugar beets, wheat, and molasses. We need to stop accepting contamination as business as usual. There are so many recalls on the FDA site for food in general that it boggles the mind. Admittedly, some of the infractions are labeling issues, such as undeclared soy in a chocolate product or undeclared milk in a marinara sauce, but many other infractions include Listeria and E. coli contamination in human food products. The big ag facilities process huge amounts of food products and animal feeds, increasing exponentially the chances for contamination, whether it be beef thyroid hormone or phenobarbital in dog food or ractopamine or monensin in horse feed. It's time to demand more of the feed industry. We cannot accept the status quo.
Real horses and real dogs are healthier, perform better, and recover more quickly on real food. That's why Biostar empowers horse and canine owners with 100% whole food nutrition, supplements, and feeding programs. Biostar products are made at their own certified non-GMO facility in Gordonsville, Virginia, using real food ingredients that are raw, freeze-dried, or dehydrated, never cooked, and are free from artificial flavors, colors, soy, corn, wheat, and molasses. The Biostar product line includes a wide range of whole food, horse and dog supplements, treats, and unique artisan poultices that embrace the ancient and traditional uses of clay and plants. Visit biostarus.com today and learn about whole foods and canine and equine nutrition so you can make the best decisions about the care and health of your horses and dogs. That's biostarus.com. Whole food nutrition the way nature intended.
And on the lighter side of life, we thought it would be fun because we know the popularity of the designer dogs like Golden Doodles and Labradoodles and Puggles and Cockapoos and Yorkapoos and Schnoodles. We were going to come up with our own crosses that probably wouldn't be a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, Patty P., what do you have?
Well, I don't know why I found this one to be so funny because I just had so much fun thinking about it all day. I think, but didn't we decide that they would be the most unlikely of crosses?
Well, unlikely and ones that you wouldn't want to create as a designer dog.
Like a Great Dane Chihuahua and call it a Great Wawa? Oh yeah, I'm just
Okay, I had a Great Dane cross too.
You did? Okay, what was yours?
With a Dachshund. It was a Doc Dane.
Oh, that's really good.
Oh my goodness.
Okay, Jennifer, what do you have?
Let me see. I don't think I had any Great Dane ones. No. My first one is a Labrashund. It digs in the ground and retrieves moles.
Oh,
You want that?
that's good. Okay. Okay, Tigger, what else do you have?
Okay, so I have a Poppy Korg.
A poppy.
A pop.
A Papillon Corgi.
Oh, that's good.
Poppy cord.
Okay, that's funny because I have a corgi pie, which is a Shar-Pei and a corgi. Which can you only imagine?
No, that would be the ugliest dog ever.
Jesus.
Ever. Oh, I have a Shar-Pei mix too.
Okay.
I have a Sharp Lamute.
A shark Lamute.
Which is
awesome.
a Shar-Pei Alaskan Malamute.
Okay.
It's going to chase the UPS truck for 3 miles, and then when they stop, and the driver gets out, he's going to bite him.
Oh, that's perfect. Okay, that's good. Okay. Tigger, what else you got?
I have a Dober Palm.
Oh.
Be careful. Eddie might hear about that.
A Doberpalm is also known as a housewife of New Jersey.
Right there.
That's
Can you imagine? That's just what I picture. Oh, no, you didn't.
Oh, yes, you did. And pointing her little nails. Yeah.
Oh,
Pet P.
Okay. I have an Aussie It's an Australian Schnauzer.
My
Which is just, when you think about the energy level of that, there's really just no good reason to do that.
you know how in Marvel Comics, when one of the bad guys just spontaneously combusts?
Yes.
That's it.
That's
it.
right there. Mhm. I agree.
Wow.
I agree.
Jennifer?
I have a Cybernard,
Cybernard?
which is a Siberian Husky St. Bernard.
Oh, good. That's a good one.
Yes, he's going to dig his way out of the backyard, and at the end of a 20-mile-long jog, the first human being that makes eye contact with him, he's going to go sleep on his couch.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
There we go.
Oh,
The Cybernard.
Tig?
okay, well, I was in the Husky. I have a Husky Poo.
A husky poo?
Husky poo.
Husky Poo. A Poodle Husky mix.
Oh, God, that's good. Oh, God, that's
Curly
good.
hair that
Okay.
sheds
Yeah, that's right.
Yes. And owls.
and howls.
Okay, so my last one is a Burfenchug.
What?
A Burfenchug. A French Bulldog St. Bernard.
Oh, perfect.
A Burfenchug. Burfenchug.
I thought it was a French Bulldog with a pug.
No, Burfen. Well, the Burr.
It's for Bernard.
The French, and then for the Ugg was actually supposed to be dog. I just kept thinking about what that would look like, and I really didn't put a lot of thought into the name. But
Wow.
Jennifer?
Oh, let's see, what else have I got? Oh, I've got one more. It's an
Okay.
It's an Airhound. It's an Airedale Terrier and Greyhound mix, and that's bad because
God.
that's going to be 65 pounds of bad attitude that can go 35 miles an hour.
She did descriptions. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was good.
We need to do this again with descriptions like Jennifer.
Okay, here's my last one. It's my favorite.
What's that?
It's a chow box.
A chow boxer.
Chow boxer.
Oh God, that's good. You know, the sad thing is sometimes you actually see these dogs.
Yeah.
I don't think any of these have been seen.
No, I hope not. And this is not to give anybody ideas. This was
Yeah.
this was just to be silly.
I've got a couple of fun horsey ones.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, these are some fun. These are ones that we actually have come up with on the Horses in the Morning show when we go do weird stuff sometimes. A paint mini cross is a minto. An Andalusian Lipizan is not only a fantastic dressage horse, but it is also referred to it as an Andizan.
An
Andizan. And for pony lovers, we've got you covered. We've got the Gotland pony, Newfoundland pony cross called a Gotfound. And last but not least, we have the Tacky Cracker, which is a Carolina Marsh Tacky crossed with a Florida Cracker. It's a Tacky Cracker.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
Ridden by small children with jelly on their fingers.
Oh God. So funny.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I could go on. I have lots and lots of those.
Okay,
yes.
this was a good one. That was a lot of fun. The coffee clutch was a lot of fun this time.
Yes.
I enjoyed that. Oh.
If you come up with any great designer dog ideas, please go to our Facebook page or go to our website healthycritters.com and share us your
We want to
new
hear
designer
your design
dogs.
Yes, tell us about your Aussie schnoos.
Aussie schnoos.
Or your great Wawa.
Well, let's wrap it up, ladies.
Thanks for listening, everyone, and thanks to our sponsor, Biostar US. You can find them online at biostarus.com.
Get the Horse Radio Network phone app on iOS or Android by searching for Horse Radio Network in the App Store. It's free and easy to use.
For details about today's show, go to healthycrittersradio.com, where you can find links, photos, and more information about our guests.
As always, we love your feedback. Please follow us on Facebook under Healthy Critters Radio.
Be sure to visit all the great shows on Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Love your dog.
Hug your horse.
Feed your chickens.
Clean your litter box.
Dance with your goat.
Slither with your snakes.
Howl at the moon.
Hang with your hamster.
Party with your parrot.
Waddle with your walrus.
Outwit your otter.
Cuddle your cows.
Rap with your raptor.
Go chipping with your chipmunks.
Forgive your fox.
While hedging your hog.
We also recommend that you rack with your raccoon.
Gyrate with your giraffe.
Meditate with a meerkat.
Uber with your orangutan.
Facebook with your flamingo.
Ponder with your panda.
Walk with your Wookiee.
Yawn with your yak.
Twitter with your toucan.
Go raining with your reindeer.
Dropbox your dragon.